Hello and welcome to Lesson 4, Learning Theory of Attachment. In this lesson, we're going to look at operant and classical conditioning and how these theories could explain how we form attachments. So remember, attachment is this emotional bond, two-way, that's shown in their behavior. Well, the learning theorists and behaviorists, they're not interested in the emotional part. They just say that it's a demonstrable bond shown in their behavior, but it's one that's learned through conditioning. So let's have a little recap of operant conditioning. So operant conditioning consists of positive reinforcement, negative reinforcement, and punishment. Behavior that is rewarded will more likely be repeated. We talk about the behavior being strengthened. Negative reinforcement, behavior that switches off a negative experience or removes it, is more likely to be repeated. And then punishment leads to behavior being less likely to be repeated. And of course we have positive and negative punishment in there as well. So what is the primary explanation? So positive reinforcement. Ellie cries and is rewarded by feeding. This encourages the behavior to be repeated. Ellie's crying is an unpleasant experience for Annie, her mother. Thus, removal of that unpleasant experience by feeding and quieting the baby acts as negative reinforcement for the mum. It's switching off something the mum doesn't like. So, operant conditioning is all about reinforcement. Classical conditioning sees attachment as just ever so slightly different. So we have an unconditioned stimulus that produces an unconditioned response. In this case, milk, and the response it produces is relief from hunger or satisfaction or pleasure. And this is the relationship before conditioning. This doesn't have to be taught. This is a natural association. Babies feel more relaxed and satisfied after they've been fed. During conditioning, we have the same relationship, but this time we pair a neutral stimulus. According to classical conditioning, the approach to attachment, the mother is the neutral stimulus. So we pair the mother with the food in this relationship. After conditioning, the mother has now become the conditioned stimulus and can relieve and satisfy the baby just by holding. And what's more, the pleasure that the baby would originally have got from feeding is now provided by the mother, and this can be generalized to other situations. So when the baby hurts itself and the mother picks it up, it can generalize the idea that mother means satisfaction, mother means removal of pain, and therefore mother means comfort. So the mother's presence soothes the baby in a way that originally only the food did. So let's have a look at a question. Lucy is a single mother with an 8-month-old called Jordan. She has just returned to work full-time and has hired a nanny. The nanny provides care for all of Jordan's physical needs. However, Lucy ensures that she is always home before he goes to bed and spends the last hour playing and reading with him before he sleeps. She is concerned that Jordan will form a stronger relationship with her nanny than herself. Has Lucy cause for concern according to classical conditioning? Well, yes, because the nanny provides all the physical needs, the feeding, the changing, and these are all stimulus response relationships. If the baby's nappy is wet and the nanny changes that, the nanny will be removing a negative stimulus from the baby, negative reinforcement. So that's operant conditioning. But classical conditioning, over time, the baby will associate the removal of negative stimuli, the provision of positive stimuli, experience and reinforcement with the nanny, and the nanny is neutral stimulus in this case. So over time it is likely that the child will form a strong bond, if learning theory is correct, with the nanny. So we have operant and classical conditioning. In the guide notes there's a bit more about Dollard and Miller's drive reduction theory, which I would recommend, and we'll talk about operant conditioning in a bit more detail during class. But let's have a look at the evaluation. So the first of all is there's evidence to contradict learning theory off the bat, and the evidence comes from comparative psychology. So studies like Harlow and Lorenz seem to suggest that attachment is innate and is not learned. And what's more, with Harlow, the infant monkeys did not form attachment to the mother that provided the physical care, i.e. the mother that had when the wire mother had the bottle attached to her, the monkeys didn't form an attachment. They spent more time on the cloth mother. So it suggests that provision of reward is not solely how we would form attachments, and that it seems to be innate. Human research also seems to contradict this. So learning theory, remember Schaefer and Emerson study, 39% of infants or children did not form attachment to the person who provided physical care. This suggests that, again, there is something innate, and it's not directly to do with rewards, food, or classical conditioning. However, we could argue classical conditioning is still involved. If we appreciate that, instead of focusing on food as being the the unconditioned stimulus or the rewarding stimulus, we could consider it as something a bit more complex, that maybe the comfort provided by the mother is actually acts as a positive reinforcer as well. We know, for example, when we hug each other, we get a big boost in oxytocin, so there could be a release when mother hugs baby in hormone levels or neurotransmitter levels or whatever it may be that's being associated with the mother. So there could be some learning still there. A major issue with this, and I would say this is not just an AA star evaluation actually, is that the theory is highly environmentally reductionist. Environmental reductionism, remember, argues that we break it down so that behavior is said to be purely a stimulus response to attachment. Bear in mind, attachment is another word for love, really. And we're breaking this incredibly complex thing down to just stimulus response. So it's highly reductionist, and by reducing it to this level, I think we lose some of the meaning of what attachment even is. You could also argue that it's deterministic and offers a bleak view of attachment, effectively dooming people who are raised by poor parents to suffer poor attachment for their life. However, because it is learning theory, that could change later in life with the implementation of a new set of positive reinforcers and classical conditioning. And it's worth mentioning that social learning theory, according to Hay and Vespo, may provide a stronger explanation for attachment. So they argue that that caregiver interactions can best be explained by social learning theory. They suggest that infants learn through imitating modelling behaviour, hugging, kissing, stuff like that. They also respond to direct instructions, come and give dad a hug, or whatever it may be. And they're observing their brothers and their sisters and their mother and father and how they all interact. And they're rewarded for it, and they see vicarious reinforcement. So Hay and Vespo may have a point when it comes to social learning theory being involved. That's pretty much learning theory in a nutshell. If you have any questions, as always, please do not hesitate to ask. Otherwise, thank you very much for your time, and I will see you around. Bye.